Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment of our program brought to you by Southeast Termite and Pest Control. It's that time of year in the fall. Temperatures are starting to drop. Feels good, actually. But it doesn't feel good to stink bugs, ladybugs, and box elder bugs. So they're saying they want in your house. Well, you don't want them in your house unless you're, kind of weird. And I'm guessing most of you aren't. If you're watching this show, you're pretty normal, my guess. So you're probably not going to want those bugs in your house. And the way to get rid of them is to do what I did last year, and that is get the outdoor treatment. They come out. Prevent them from coming into your home from the beginning. And if those things get into your home, the problem is you don't see them for a couple of months, and then spring hits, and they're all giving birth to little babies. All of them, they're laying eggs for little babies that are out there. So get rid of them. Southeast Termite and Pest Control, prevent the fall invaders. All right, I want to remind everybody we have an overtime segment. We do this every week. You can check it out on sportsource.tv. Follow me on Twitter right there, and I'll tell you when it's posted. It should be up by 3 o'clock at the least. We sit around and we take about 20, 25 minutes to take your questions off Twitter and discuss those. That'll be up along with our entire show every week by about 3 o'clock at sportsource.tv. Want to remind you also, we're with you all weekend, every weekend. Pigskin Panel, that's WNML. Are we on this Friday, even though it's an open date? There you go. Yes, Sports Source kickoff on Fox 43, Saturdays at 10:30. We'll be there, even though it's an open date. And, hey, we're 52 weeks a year right here on the Sports Source. Next week is going to be kind of part 2 of today's discussion. It's going to be a whole lot about the state of the program and where it's going and who's going to be going with it. And then also want to show you our Chuck versus Pearl standings on the year. All right. Only 2 people missed last week, Daniel and Sterling. They're now 0-4. Everybody else, Shazan's got an asterisk because he didn't send me a game one week, and then he lied about how many points he would have picked. Now, he's on the show. He's going to whip me. All right. But you look on the right side, that's where we're keeping up with the points in terms of how far everybody is from all of their picks. So through 5 games, Jimmy's now at the top. 50 points off through 5 picks. That's better than anybody else up there. This week's big winner was Bobby Scott. He took Georgia by 20, so he was the closest to the pin. Wow. And then you look way down there at the bottom. Sterling Hinton's still in double digits, but poor Daniel Hood. Yikes. All right.
And I believe that left column is the true indicator of what we're doing now.
The one that had the 4 people tied with you? Yeah. Okay. Here we go. We're going to pick Tennessee, Carolina next week. So our show next week is when we'll pick Tennessee versus South Carolina. I want to see what they do against Arkansas before we make that pick. But here's the thing. There are a lot of folks who wanted Butch Jones fired from day one. They didn't want him hired. I think some of those people have been very unfair. They wanted him fired after going 9-4. But the reality is, it had been building. You're finishing in the top 25. You're going to bowl games. Nobody wants to, I'm tired of hearing it's better than Dooley. Well, it was. It was improving. In your field, in your line of work, the people that say that, if you were getting better with your sales or whatever it is you do, and the boss came in and said, nah, not good enough, you'd feel like you were being screwed over. So he had been getting it better. And now, not only the back step that most of us expected, we said 7-5, but it looks worse than that. How did we get here? Very quickly, we got about a minute here. Anybody could jump in.
We got here at South Carolina and Vanderbilt last year. He had a chance to build up goodwill to where he had a cushion for a bad season. Right. He didn't do it, so the heat was on ever since then.
Which we said all last summer. We kept saying you better win this fall, because next year you take a step back, and he didn't.
That's a huge part of it. Player development, I think, is still an issue. Recruiting is more of an issue than people realize. There are some positions they still haven't recruited well enough. Wide receiver, cornerback, defensive end,
linebacker
need to get better. Offensive line's got a lot of talent. They just haven't developed it.
Lack of difference makers. I think you had about 5 or 6 last year, and in my opinion, right now you got 1, John Kelly. You don't have difference makers, it's hard to win at this level.
How did we get here, Chuck?
I wrote down quarterback does not fit the system, overrated offensive line, poor tackling, confusion on defense. And, guys, your kicking game has taken a huge step back.
Special teams no longer a big A.
And the rugby stop punt. Come on, man.
Daniel, how did we get there?
I just think, to me, everything goes back to the weight room. I think we made a mistake last summer, and I think it's showing big problems still now.
Because a lot of people expected big changes, and we haven't seen the big changes yet. I'm going to skip over Sterling. David, how did we get here?
I think ultimately, I guess it would be recruiting. You got to get better players in. It's not the X's and the O's, it's the Jimmys and the Joes.
There's a lot of issues out there. I don't think there's any wrong issues out there, but to me the big one is Dobbs. If you had been able to redshirt him and you still have him, we're not talking about Butch Jones surviving the season. I think you're much better off. Now, that's the way the game goes. That's the deal. You don't take step backs in year 5 in people's mind, even though when we were talking about Johnny Majors and that 81 team, that was his 5th year. It was his 5th year, and he went on to have some pretty good ones here. But The perception is you can't do it in year 5, especially since you didn't live up to expectations last year. All right, Sterling, good talk. Thank you all very much. We'll see you on Overtime later today on SportsSource.tv. See you next week right here on the Sports Source.
The Sports Source is brought to you by Fast Frame with Heather Whiteside art now available.